You have studied Aikido for as many years as you have been a therapist. Um,
Yeah, pretty much.
what was first? And tell me your story.
I basically was living in California with my daughter at the time. She was a baby, and I was finishing my master's, and I went to, I think it was Wendy Palmer's Aikido dojo. It was in Mill Valley in California. It was above a hamburger store. And oh my God, Alex, I saw it and I thought it literally took my breath away. There was just something about the movement. I just fell in love with it right away. And of course, I was a single mother at the time and I had a little baby. And I just kind of put it in my heart somewhere that one day I'm going to do that. And, then when I moved back to Montreal, I stayed there for about a year and I didn't start Aikido until I moved to Toronto in 1990. It was in between 1990 and 1991. So at the fall of 1990. And yeah, so it was in Toronto that I started. And this was a weird story. I was looking for Aikido, and I don't know what led me into this community center. Um, and at that time, Yumi's Dojo had just started because they started from Toronto Aikikai. And I just walked into this gym, and there were some people with some blue mats, and they were rolling around. I honestly, I couldn't say they were as beautiful in my mind as Wendy Palmer's dojo because it was West Coast Aikido style. So it was very flowy. And Yumi's dojo was more crash and burn, like Kawahara sensei style. So very different. Um, but I signed up, and that was the beginning of a love affair that lasts to this day.
What are the psychological benefits of Aikido training?
What do my clients complain about the most? They're anxious or they're depressed. So if somebody's anxious, it means their energy's all over the place, like their energy's ungrounded and vibrating too high up. If you think about it from an energetic point of view. So Aikido, naturally, you're learning how to ground your energy. So you're bringing the energy down with your breath through your hara, through your legs. So the energy is being grounded into the ground. So the top part of your body is super loose and relaxed, and your body is like a tree trunk. So, not when you're throwing, I should say that is the case. So you learn how to be very centered and very still and present. So, that's the antithesis of anxious. So when somebody's anxious, they're not grounded and they're not present. Also, when somebody's depressed, their energy is not moving. It's still, it's not activated. So somebody who's in a depressed state, um, their energy is stuck. But Aikido helps loosen up your energy so it's flowing naturally. And through the movement with others, we learn that we free ourselves through our relationships with others. We don't free ourselves in the vacuum of ourselves. Like it's through the practice of Aikido, we learn about joy, we learn about freedom, we learn about connection, and we learn about things that matter in life, like being connected to people. Like, think of it, Alex, when somebody throws you and they throw you really hard, but they're not really caring about you, it doesn't feel good, right? But if somebody throws you with all the love in their heart and they throw you really hard, you feel happy, right? And you walk out of the dojo happy. Well, that's the best antidepressant ever. So I say if people went to Aikido, they wouldn't necessarily need to go for therapy, right? Because I think Aikido helps rewire our brain and changes our biochemistry by the movement and breathing because it frees up our energetic system in a way that in therapy you would have to do a lot of breath work, for example, or movement in order to accomplish that.
When you are on the mat and you do Aikido, what's the most therapeutic thing? Is it the touch? Is it the movement in sync? Is it
Uh,
harmony? In the movement itself, what
oh,
makes you feel the best?
I think it's when I really feel connected to my when I can't tell if I'm Nage and I can't tell where I end and Uke begins. And when we're flowing from one to the other and it switches and I can't, I feel so connected to Uke that I'm not trying to do anything. Like we've stopped trying and we're just there together and we don't know what's happening next. So it's kind of like being in the moment. So, like, if I think about, why do people feel horrible in life as a therapist? People are living in the past, they're living in regret and being somewhere else and regretting their life, or they're projecting into the future in fearful thoughts, or they're living in the wrong time zone. What Aikido does as a practice is it hammers you into the moment, hammers you, but in a nice way, hammers us into the moment because we have to be totally proprioceptively aware to be, we're not anticipating, oh, what should I do next? When we're really doing Aikido, we're not thinking anything. We are just in the moment and seeing what happens next. We're, we're exploring with another person how the present moment is all there is. So, from all the spiritual practices of the world, we know that happiness and joy live in the present moment. And when people are neurotic, they're not living in the present moment at all. They're living in some other time zone, usually. So, a therapist is helping a person learn how to be in the moment. Whereas in Aikido, we're learning how to be in the moment in a nonverbal way. We're not saying, oh, I'm going to do that, or practicing like cognitively doing it. We're practicing energetically being very alive in the moment. Like, imagine if I had thought to myself, oh, what am I going to tell Alex today? I had no idea what I was going to tell you today. I haven't thought about it. I didn't want to think about it because for me, the thought of rehearsing what I was going to say to you and then saying it to you would be like dead. So that's like saying, I'm going to do this technique, and that technique, and then living it on the mat. It seems phony. So that's why Randori is so nice, right? Like it's an Aikido. It's like for people who don't know, who we might show this to, when that's free flow, when you don't know what's going to happen in Aikido, that's what's beautiful. It's like all the time you practice, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, and then you forget about all that stuff, and then you're just there, and it's the magic of trusting yourself in the moment. It's like if you don't know what you're going to say to me, Alex, what would you love to say to me right now in this moment if you didn't have any idea what you were going to say next, right?
I love you.
And you know what? I love you too.
Let me ask you this. How Aikido can help us, regular people deal with stress, with work situations,
Ah,
with family issues, with daily life.
okay. So if we think about like from what we know about the technical part of Aikido, when somebody attacks us, we don't attack them back, right? We join with them and then we move ourselves. We don't try to push or pull anybody else. So the same thing in life. If somebody's being very nasty to me, I don't want to tell them they're an asshole. I want to join with that person and find a way to move myself. I'm going to do exactly Aikido off the mat to resolve conflict. And how I'm going to do that is not do this with people. And that doesn't mean not having a position, but being loving and gentle and clear. And that's what a good Nage does. They're loving and gentle and clear with Uke. And then Uke wants to go with them. And then the next thing they know, they're on the ground and everybody's happy. So the same way we resolve conflict in a workplace. I mean, there's a whole group of people, in the Aiki extensions. I'm sure you know that group. I mean, I don't follow them, but there's quite a number of people. I think often like retired Aikidoists, they're really trying to understand this thing about how do we take the principles that we learn in Aikido, because we all kind of intuit that it's amazing what we're doing, but how do we live it? I also think, for example, if I'm on the mat and I train hard and I'm going regularly. But then if I'm not a good person off the mat, then Aikido's not working. So we have to bring what we learn on the mat into our life to be a kinder person. Sometimes I want to talk to the people who always choose to train with the muscle. You know, like I don't really understand why. Like what I find interesting, the moment I can touch somebody, I know what they feel like. I can tell what they're like off the mat also. So somebody who's pushy will hold the other person in exactly the way they are off the mat. It's kind of a weird thing. It's like people will do in therapy what they do in their life. They'll behave the same way. So the same thing happens on the mat. Like you probably know in the dojo, you understand something about the character of the person, the way they hold you, right? And also the way you hold them. And like, are they hard and just gripping, or do they give you something? Like, and you think about the people you love training with, right? What is it about them? They give of themselves to the other, right? They're generous of spirit. I think I can name a bunch of people in your dojo, like you and Eddie and a bunch of people in your dojo who are like that. They're generous of spirit. And you could train with those people forever, right? And some people give you nothing. They're just hard as a rock. So I ask myself, I wonder, what is it for those people? What are they getting out of? Like, because they're still training 30 years, some of them 40 years. I wonder, what do they get out of it? Because I don't know, actually. Because for me, unless your Aikido gets to the place that you're learning something about spirit, I don't know what the purpose is. Because for me, it's not a physical practice, it transcends that. And I think it helps us transcend our ego to become, I'm going to say, one with others.
So I'm just thinking, when you watch people on the mat as a therapist, you pretty much
Yeah.
know who you're dealing with, right?
Yes, 100%. I can feel if somebody's arrogant, if they're gentle, if they're timid. Sometimes people will hold you and there's no energy in their and they're going to be like that in their bodies. So it's very interesting how we um, can see or know a lot, but it's not a cognitive thing. It's like we know immediately about a person when we watch them train. We can see a lot about who they are as a person, or who they are so far, because people are changing all the time, right? There's no such thing as a static person. We're always evolving. And hopefully, Aikido is one art that really, like yoga, helps people grow as spirits also. We don't often get to talk about, I'd like to talk to like a plumber who's an Aikidoist, or somebody who does something else and sees, how does a carpenter or someone else who has a different kind, like Harvey Sensei talks about Aikido as art, and he talks about paintbrushes and learning technique as different kinds of having to learn the different strokes in painting because he's a painter. But he has a very different way of seeing that, even though I think he would see also the spiritual, for sure he does. But he looks at it through painter's eyes, which is interesting, right? So
Right.
it will be interesting to see from, you asking people questions about their work and how they make connections to that and Aikido also. You know, you were wondering about the connection between Aikido and therapy, but I think it's more about not so much therapy, but personal development. And in that way, Aikido and therapy have something in common, and they both help us, hopefully, in our personal development. Because one thing I always say is like, there's no place to escape yourself on the mat. Like the moment you walk into the dojo and you bow, you see your ego right there. And I think about the goal of therapy is to first learn about our ego and have a strong ego so we can surrender living out of ego, and we can learn to live out of love and something higher than ourselves, to have I'm going to say a higher purpose. Sounds so kind of woo woo, but I think that's also the goal of Aikido. is, first when we get to the dojo, we want to like, you see people sometimes they're practicing and you can tell they want to be better than other people, or they want to do the technique better and they're kind of like bragging in their bodies. But when somebody's really good in Aikido, you feel their humility and their presence right away. It's amazing. So, and you can sense that, like, and it's almost like they've embraced you with their energy the moment you touch them. And that to me is an Aiki artist, somebody who has transcended the technique, and the quality of their presence is just so beautiful that they're not of their ego anymore.